We've been talking with Andrew about the press release, which came out yesterday. I want to bring this up. We talked with Tommy Curran, and there's been some pushback on the idea that the coaching was really the problem last year. There's been some, you heard Vince Wilfork talking about it the other day, saying that the players don't respect the coaches, and that's the real problem, not the coaching. And some other drips and drabs out there, Mike Florio and Chris Sims, talking about how Mac was calling all these other people and doing all this stuff, and how that may have upset Patricia and Judge. And then Curran drops this little tidbit that maybe those are the two that are leaking all this stuff. Is it worse than we think in there? I mean, because if that's the case, then that's pretty dysfunctional.
I think we generally have it on the nose that life between Joe Judge, Matt Patricia, and Mac Jones is not great. I think they're all pretty happy to be on a break. Of course, they'd love to be in the playoffs, but ultimately, that's not a relationship that really got better as the season wore on. When Mac is saying in July, I'm going to teach Joe, and he's going to teach me. Like, that irked the staff. I can tell you that
about that.
for a fact.
That pissed them off?
That's where they started. And a day before was when Belichick is saying Max had dramatic improvement from the offseason, showering him with praise. We're all going, where is this from? Did he learn his lesson from Brady? Since then, it's been about radio silence, except for one comment about loving Mac's attitude and passion after the Arizona game, because, again, he had all these outbursts on the field. So part of this stuff that comes out is just how the sausage is made. Florio talks to coaches or agents of coaches, same with national folk. And it's a lot of, like, Mac calling around the league, as Chris Sims said, might also be one of these where, like, you get trade rumors and so-and-so called about that player. And it's like, that happens every day around the league. Was there an offer made? Was Mac actually saying, get me out of here to those people around the league? I'm not saying that. It just might be people complain about work. They complain to their friends, and he has friends in the league.
Not me. I don't do that. That must be a thing that you do. Herald thing. I never did that at the Herald. Every day I came in with a huge smile plastered on my face, grinning
just
idiot.
Like right now?
Just grinning idiot. Man, I love it here.
You do now, yeah.
But so when we hear Curran talking about, it's possible that there are coaches under Bill, Patricia and Judge, who are maybe trying to change the narrative a little bit. It's not all their fault, Mac wasn't a perfect kid or whatever in this situation. And was the situation that bad? And this and that. How much of that ties back to Bill, knowing that somebody like Matt Patricia is one of Bill's best friends? I mean, I'm just saying from the sense of what you get, not that somebody has told you, Bill told Matt to put this out there.
Yeah, I think they're acting on their own because, again, they came back to New England to rehab their images. Obviously, that has not gone well. This was the only soft landing spot they could find. If Matt Patricia is successful, he goes, I've been a defensive coordinator, been an offensive coordinator, been a head coach, and look, I'm ready to be the best coach I've ever been in these interviews that are probably at least 3 years down the road now, given how this went. Same for Joe Judge, coached on offense and special teams. I learned my lesson from the Giants. That has all been pushed back because of how this season has gone, in addition to Mac's clear statistical regression. And now Mac did not play, I think, as well as some of us thought during the season, but ultimately it was within the range of what we saw last year. And so when you ask why didn't that year two leap happen, you start with the new coaches because the cast around him really was about the same. And what happened was they didn't take that year two leap. They went back into the worst Patriots offense since 1995.
You don't think he was just devastated that Shaq Mason left? It's like, I can't go on.
Well, did we see Mike Onwenu? Shout out Mike Onwenu, right guard.
Yeah.
Their best player on offense, aside from Ramondre Stevenson, gave up one sack the whole season.
True. Do you think that Bill's refusal to fire any of these guys, we keep hearing no heads are going to roll, just reassignments, rearranging, things like that, is that him sort of having their back in some way? Like, I'm not going to fire these guys. These are my guys. They didn't do well in this job, but they're good guys and they're staying here. Like, he's digging in a little bit, right?
Yeah, no question.
Yeah.
I don't think the Crafts are probably going to push in that direction because they know he's just going to dig his heels in, right? Like, he's vouched for those coaches. He's brought them back in. He gave both of them endorsements to go be head coaches elsewhere. He very much believes in Matt Patricia, who someone described to me as being Bill's unofficial son, and then Joe Judge, who obviously he believed in a lot to be a quarterback's coach with a second-year quarterback and the most key point of his development, and said, yeah, you'll be fine. So, yeah, I think they'll be reassigned. They'll be elsewhere, but I don't think they pushed him to fire them because, A, that's going to be dead money on their hands, and also, B, a waste of time given Bill's feelings about both of them.
We have a little bit of breaking news here. If you were hoping Sean McVay would be the new offensive coordinator, apparently, according to Rossini, he has informed members of the Rams organization he'll be staying on as the head coach, per sources. That was an interesting little flirtation with retirement there from McVay, wasn't it? I mean, you got 70-year-old Bill Belichick who's never going to leave. Meanwhile, Sean McVay's like, I think I'm gonna weigh my options here in the offseason. I thought that was strange, especially considering his coaching tree and how hot it is right now. Like the McVay coaching tree, people want in on that. and he's ready to just sort of, kick it all out. That being said, how creative of a offensive coordinator could Bill Belichick even tolerate?
It depends. Again, I think he has to ask himself this question before he starts making a list of coaches. Do I want to run it back with the McDaniels, O'Brien, Charlie Weiss system that we have in place, is still in the files in Foxborough with every single conceivable play, given all the iterations there were over 22 years? Or do I want to fully pivot and make the change to a Shanahan system, which they tried to split the difference last year? It was a whole half measure, a season failed by half measures, from max injury and return with Bailey Zappi to we'll do some wide zone and play action bootlegs, but not really totally invest in that. And if he wants to go with the latter option, then you have a huge pool of candidates. And we're talking about a lot of McVay guys, maybe even people who haven't been offensive coordinators, but will bring assistants with them that know how to install that system, because that's where they ran into problems, where they didn't have the answers you couldn't find on tape of how to adjust to certain looks. They said, yeah, we can install wide zone. What happens when you have a backside blitz you didn't anticipate? That's why it was a disaster last year. These are not McVay coaches. They're just installing McVay stuff from what they see on film from a distance.
Do they have the personnel on their roster to execute that? I mean,
not right now.
I was going to say, even if they bring in a coach who's born and bred in that system, do they have the line that can figure that out?
No, but that was also the same answer when you started training camp last year.
And
do
it
they
didn't
have the
work.
personnel?
But the point is, it didn't work. So if they pivot that way, then isn't that a bigger overhaul in the offseason in terms of what they have to do with their roster?
I mean, ultimately, I think it comes down to the offensive line, because that's what you're talking about, is smaller, more athletic linemen that can get out, have all these different reach
Well, they got
blocks.
that in Cole Strange.
Right, they drafted that way, which was
can't
not
put
a
on any
first sign.
weight, so.
Yeah, but you have good receivers in terms of run blocking. Your running backs are capable in terms of that style. I don't think they're going to run into issues there. It's just a matter of, can you change out two guys who are over 340 pounds, Mike Onwenu and Trent Brown, for maybe lighter guys who are better adapted to that system?
McVay going back, that probably cuts Zach Robinson out, right?
I was never big on Zach Robinson.
Yeah.
The guy's been a coach in the league for 4 years. You're going to hand him the keys to your offense because they drafted him in the 7th round in year 2000, whatever. I've grown more accustomed to the Kingsbury thinking than I was. But my initial thought to that was, if we're hiring for jobs next year based on what we did in 2003, I'll go back to babysitting. I'll be a Little League umpire. That makes sense. Why is Kingsbury make sense? But he's someone who, again, will do what Bill tells him to, because that's where he's at in his career if he wants to get back to a head coach.
If you've heard that Matt Patricia is essentially like another son to Bill Belichick, is Cam Accord his soulmate? What is going to happen? Are we even going to know when Cam Accord is reassigned or no longer part of the outfit and Gillette whatsoever?
No.
Thank you, Bill. No, I think as public as they were with the statement last night, unprecedented move, we've all covered it. They're going to be very quiet about coaches being reassigned and or fired. He's not going to do that. Bill won't, to these coaches, because of how hard they've worked. And yeah, it was a total failure. Worst special teams of the Belichick era, worst in the entire league. Maybe he goes back to being an assistant. I don't know what else they would do, but I think it was worth standing by Cam Accord last year, because his first season at the helm, 2000, they had the best special teams in the league. So you have one.
You mean 2020?
2020, excuse me.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2020. Yeah.
Say,
Cam Accord was probably babysitting and being a Little League umpire
Exactly.
in 2000, but in 2020. So he has a down year, 2021. This has been a disaster. Of course, I think he'll be reassigned.
We're talking with Andrew Callahan here of the Boston, of the Boston Herald, as I choke on myself. Andrew, the end of the season was obviously not great for this team in any real way, but one thing that I still can't really shake were those suspensions at the end of the year. The way that Jack Jones and Jake Bailey got suspended, in particular Jones. Bailey, it sounds like that was more of a, let's get out of this guy's money, but Jones was at times the best cover corner in the league, according to PFF. He flashed.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, in those early weeks, and they're really taking a hardline stance with him. Kind of reminds me of Kendrick Bourne and some of these other guys that this year really got punished, it seems like. Are they going to be less punitive next year, I guess is my question.
Well, I don't think so. But the thing we knew about Jack Jones before he got to New England and put on a helmet with Pat Patriot was his decision-making is a little questionable.
Right.
Okay, you try to break into a Panda Express, however many years ago that was. He's in college. He's a little bit older now. But when you're skipping rehab sessions, as Albert Breer reported, or you're showing up late to them, that's just on you. If you want to come back and play football, get healthy. Do exactly as they say. He told me after that game in Arizona when he hurt his knee, it's just a bruise. I'll be, quote, all right. Okay, well, make it all right. So I think that's on him and just a part of the pattern of decision-making in his life that's continued now, unsurprisingly, in his first year in the NFL.
What does that illustrate to you about the way that this season ended in terms of the guys in the locker room and their relationship with the coaches?
I don't think Jack Jones is necessarily illustrative of the entire locker room for the reasons I just mentioned. There aren't many guys in that locker room who tried to rob a Panda Express. And moved around.
Know of.
Yeah, that we know of. Maybe McDonald's.
Was it Golden Tate who broke into like a donut shop when he was in college? Remember that?
It could have
Golden
been.
Tate did that at Notre
Golden
Dame?
Tate at Notre Dame, like at 3 a.m, broke into some donut shop and just went to town on a bunch of
Who
donuts.
among us?
Look, who among us has not had that thought?
Right.
Maybe even just last
Cast
night
the first stone,
coming
right.
off of TV. But no, I don't. I think Jack Jones is a one-off. Now, if you want to talk about Mac Jones as a leader, as a captain, as the quarterback face of the franchise, pushing back against the staff, that's a different conversation. But
Let's have that conversation.
How much time do we have? You guys are going to kick me out in like 6 minutes.
No, don't look at the clock. Just talk. Come on. What? So, in terms of Mac being a leader, do you feel like his leadership was tainted by having maybe a little friction, some tension, not just with his offensive coordinator, but maybe with some other coaches in there?
I don't think it was the friction that tainted the leadership. I think it was how he expressed that disappointment or angst or whatever you want to call it, rage, whatever it is.
MFing the sideline?
Yeah, his method, okay? Because if anyone could have rightfully had a problem with the offense, we all did for 17 games watching this team, but he was the only one out there gesturing with his hands, screaming on the sideline. And look, when Brady did that, no one had an issue because he's Tom Brady. Mac Jones, obviously not in the same category. So it's a matter of, I think, with the players, seeing him put in the 10 to 12 to 14-hour days. They understand he's investing, and he's not getting his return on that investment because of the coaching. But whether you do that behind closed doors, and maybe he did, and that didn't work. But it's just the way he went about it, I know, rubbed people the wrong way on staff, and that's why I think it came back to bite him, because then they're not incentivized to find a solution to meet him halfway because they don't think he's making that effort with the way that he's acting.
So last year, Mac Jones' rookie season, his best receiver was probably Kendrick Bourne, right?
Yes.
They buried Kendrick Bourne this year. This year, his best receiver is Jacoby Myers. How serious are they going to be about re-signing him?
I think they want to bring Jacoby Myers back. Of course, like all free agent discussions, and
Right.
this isn't fun, it's going to come down to the numbers. And Jacoby has said multiple times he wants to come back. That's unusual for someone who's going to be perhaps the best receiver in the market. His agent, Drew Rosenhaus, is the right agent to have if you want to come back to New England, because Bill gives Drew seemingly whatever deals he wants. Antonio Brown, Jonnu Smith, Matt Judon, the list goes on and on. Devon Godchild last summer. So this could all happen, but if you have one team come in, the NFL San Diego Padres, to say, hey, Xander Bogaerts, here's an insane deal no one thought would be offered. Do you want it? Of course he's going to go say yes. And there are teams, Jacoby is from the Atlanta area. Falcons have more money than the Patriots, one of 3 teams that do coming into free agency. They might make that kind of offer, even if we can all agree he's a solid number 2. And the Patriots see him the same way, but they understand he's a culture driver. I just think they need to bring him back. And if they don't, then I think you get big game hunting in the trade market. But I think their priority is to bring him back.
So with Giardi tweeting out saying that, they want to elevate the wide receiver room, who out there in the trade market is the kind of receiver that you could see them really going after?
So I don't have any specific names, but I'll give you some characteristics of kind of the teams you want to talk
type
about.
of receiver.
Right. So you're looking at receivers who have bloated contracts coming up that have 1 or 2 years left that the teams don't really want to pay that either because they're over the cap or for whatever reason need to invest elsewhere. So I'll actually give you some names. Not that there's any reporting behind this, but you look at a place like Tampa where Tom Brady's contracts, all the void years, if he leaves, all that money comes up. They're saddled with dead money. They need to cut savings elsewhere. Mike Evans could happen. Keenan Allen and Mike Williams out with the Chargers. They're up against the cap. Then receivers who signed 2 years ago to these massive albatross contracts, the teams are going, oh, that wasn't such a great idea. Maybe you make some trade calls then, because the Patriots can absorb those contracts into their cap space. And that's where I think you get a veteran receiver where, yeah, you're going to have to give up a draft asset, but it's not so much because you're doing them a favor saying, we'll take that off your hands. And I think that's where they're going to have to go because, again, Jacoby Myers is pretty much the top of the free agency market, and they don't pay for big-time receivers unless they get him at a discount.
Are Devin McCourty and Matthew Slater going to be back next year?
I'm doubtful. I just think a lot of the way that they acted and spoke the last couple of weeks was a way to kind of say goodbye. And they admitted taking an extra moment in that Miami game, which they won at home, their farewell to Gillette Stadium. I'm not putting it out of the realm of possibility they come back, especially given how that special teams performance went at Buffalo for Matthew Slater. They can still play at a high level. I just think where they are in their careers, and Devin McCourty's going to do, I think, the NFL Today this weekend, which he did midseason during their bye week, and he'll be doing media at some point after his career. I just think now seems to be the right time, and they've accepted that.
Who fills that void?
It's a great question. From a leadership standpoint, I think you'd love to have a guy like Jacoby around because Devin said after that Vegas game, when we're all looking at him being like, what the were you thinking? Devin says he's everything a captain is without the title, and you need more guys like that. So Dietrich Wise already a captain. Juwan Bentley's been a captain. That's great. That's on defense. So they'll fill the void there. But special teams, who steps in? A couple other guys to mention, but they're in their second years. You need to see how they make that leap. Jacoby's done it consistently year after year after year. That's the kind of guy you want.
So you reported, going back to the press release that we got last night from the Patriots, you reported that there was some nudging from ownership in that. How about the offensive coordinator, the whatever title they throw to Gerard Mayo, should he stay here long term? Is there nudging towards now titles matter? Is there a little bit of a nudging towards restructuring the way that things operate on Bill's staff?
So I didn't ask the source whom I texted you up at about 10:30 last night specifically about that. It was more, again, the statement, just to be clear, this is kind of co-signed. Both of them read it. This is how it was sent out. Okay, great. My thinking is, though, of course, I think the Crafts would love for Bill to be less deliberately obtuse with the media and with the fans and with statements like this, where if we're going to look for an offensive coordinator, let's just admit it. This is going to happen. There's no competitive balance that's lost by announcing, like, yeah, we're bringing Cliff Kingsbury in. Here's a release. That's how 30 to 31 other teams operate across the league. If you don't hire him, great. We're all going to find out soon enough, as opposed to Bill, who waits till the eve of training camp to be like, oh, by the way, here are the titles. Because you know what? You make a bigger deal out of titles when you don't announce them, as opposed to just doing what everyone else does. That's not a reason to do it. It just gives everyone more pause and controversy and speculation to fill the void here on shows like this or on TV or where else, because why aren't the Patriots offering titles? And then it becomes a talking point. And they want distractions out the window. I think Bill creates more of them by not doing this, as opposed to making releases like they had last night.
Real quick, do you feel like Kingsbury is on the list of whoever is going to get the interviews starting next week, maybe after the holiday weekend?
I think so. But is it a call? Is it a conversation? Is it a sit-down? Is it a check-in? That I don't know. I think the obvious names are the place to start. Beyond that, again, we need to understand, does Bill want to stick to the old system, what's been here, or pivot to a whole new style of offense and trust someone to handle that in kind of the twilight of his career?